record. All right. So what I'm going to do, there's just one other thing beforehand. I just wanted to make sure that you're aware of, and that was I didn't talk about it before, but there's a cheat sheet. All right. This is in the file section of the group. Okay. And it's a living document.
Yes.
It's a living. Have both of you seen this?
I
Yes.
have it right here in front of me, yes.
Okay. No, I won't go through it in detail. There's no need to. You can have a look at. But this is just something that I can build on and sort of make it more and more useful. So it's like a, as you said, as it said, it's a cheat sheet. So it's just a quick referencing. Sometimes you can just try and highlight the most important bits about some of these things. So you can just go, oh, hang on, what did that mean? High conductivity with a low blood pressure. What did that mean? Do I need to go back through the course, or can I just quickly reference it here? Yeah. And if you both had a look at it, just over time, just give me some feedback on it, and anything else you think I can add to it, so that we could really build quite a powerful tool here that can sort of condense everything we've learned about the testing, so that if you're not really sure what something means, you can just reference back to. Okay.
Okay.
All right. So I won't go in any more about that. It's pretty self-explanatory. Like I said, if there's stuff you think you can add or stuff that you don't understand, just let me know, and I can just add to it. And I plan to do that. Like I said, right at the top, it's sort of I think there's maybe there's not. There was a heading page. All right. So I'll leave that out. Okay. So we go on to let's go on to Eva. Let's have a look at Eva's questionnaire. All right. And I guess what we'll do, I'll talk through. If you've got any questions as I talk through, just interrupt. Okay, because I can't see you. Obviously, I don't know if you're going to ask a question. We'll do our best. But I'm going to just go through what I'm thinking as I go through this assessment, and we can learn a bit out of that. Okay. I mean, blood type A. All right, when I first look at it, the most important thing, well, not the most important thing, but right at the top is the blood type. As you know, blood type A, the first thing I think of when I see blood type A is digestive issues, all right? Because we're not producing enough hydrochloric acid. We're going to be open up for the bacteria, for microbes, for parasites. So I'll be looking for those, low hydrochloric acid and everything that comes with that. So poor digestion, poor assimilation of minerals, because the pHs are going to be out. So it's not just about having low stomach acid, and therefore I can't unravel those proteins and break those proteins down to an amino acids. It's the fact that it's the chemistry as well. It's the pHs. It's providing that balance of in the digestive process of pHs, so that we can actually assimilate those minerals. I think I'm sure I've mentioned it before. With minerals just don't jump into our system. They're drawn in through electromagnetism. There's a very slight, very subtle attraction. This is why they have chelated minerals and they have ionic minerals. They have a charge to help with improved assimilation. So anything that affects that charge, anything that affects the pH, the fluids in which these things are flowing, it's going to affect that charge, and it's going to affect the body to pick up those minerals. So and low stomach acid is obviously going to have, or more often than not, it's going to have a big effect on that. So we very few people talk about that. We just we get some digestive enzymes, we take the HCl, we get the bile flowing, and that's okay. But it's the pH. It's about getting that balanced pH, which is 6.4. Okay, which is the balanced pH. This is the total body balanced pH, 6.4, and that's calculated through times your saliva pH by 2. So so with 6.5, your saliva, you times that by 2, it's 13, and then you add on your urine pH and you divide that by 3, and then we're trying to get as close as possible to 6.4. All right. When we have the 6.4, we have the ability to pick up all the minerals, including the heavy elements like iron, like iodine. Iodine has a very narrow band of pH. It requires, I think it's something like 6.3 to 6.5, that total body pH. And if you don't have that, you're going to struggle to pick up iodine. How many people struggle with iodine? Okay, so
Right.
I just want to emphasize that it's that getting the chemistry right. Just that it's getting that right that's really important. And it's not about having 6.4 urine and 6 point saliva. Remember that it's a calculation. 2 salivas plus 1 urine divided by 3, because the urine needs to be anywhere between 5.5 and 6, saliva anywhere between 6.5 and 7. All right, they're not going to be both boys.
So
Sorry.
sorry. It appears that my total pH today would be 6.5
Pretty damn good. That's pretty good.
because my saliva and my urine this morning were both 6.5.
Okay.
So,
Okay. And yeah, okay. What we got to what we've got to consider is, and we've got to remember, when these pHs are very close together. See, it's although the average needs to be around 6.4, but then we've got to consider that the urine pH needs to be anywhere between 5.5 and 6. And I think if urine pH is about 5.7, and I think if saliva pH is about 6.8, it works out at about 6.4 average or something like that. Okay, so they can't be both the same. It's the average. It's
yeah,
not.
I've run into that problem where they've both been the same sometimes, but I just started using a different pH strip today.
Yeah.
I don't know if that has something to do with it, but yesterday I was 6.6 and 6.2 for saliva and urine.
Yeah, that's not too bad. What we need to do, and when you start measuring, it's try and get a bit of an average of your urines and your salivas, if they do vary a bit, and average them out. So you'd average them out and then do that calculation. Okay. Just remember, the closer they are together, the more anabolic we are. The more, there's not much going on. All right. What's coming in is going out. It's pretty. There's not much going on as far as oxidation and stuff like that. When we're more catabolic, we're breaking down, there's a lot more stuff going on. Well, we're coming in at 6.6 or 6.7 or 6.8, but we might be, down at, or 7, we might be down at 5.5. That's more of a catabolic marker because, we're producing a lot of acids through metabolism. Whereas 6.5 and 6.5, well, there's nothing going on. Your body's in rest, and it's just rest, and it's not doing anything. Okay, so and we want those numbers to be apart. The more they're apart, and like I said, I think about 5.7 for urine and about 6.8 for saliva is probably around about ideal. But yeah, the closer they are, and if it's consistent, well, the body's running too anabolic.
And if I think I'm still running too anabolic, and I don't think I'm absorbing my minerals still.
Yeah, so that's probably what's going on. Well, I'm sure it is at the moment, if that's pretty consistent. But because you have the pH strips and you can measure, you have the opportunity to get those averages and just get an idea of, there will be some fluctuations, and even those fluctuations over a period of time, you can start learning what's going on there. But it's so you're already pushing a little bit too anabolic. So we know you need to push you more catabolic. So we know we've got to focus on runny oils. We need to focus on magnesium. We need to focus on making sure that we're not eating too many saturated fats earlier in the day, and we need to eat later in the day. And having a look through the catabolic foods and the anabolic foods, and just trying to work on that. Okay, especially if you're 6.5 and 6.5. In the morning or throughout the day, if you're doing these measures at like midnight, well, then you would be more anabolic. That's okay. Okay.
Okay. Yeah, they've been, 6.4, 6.2. This would be saliva and then urine as I speak. Okay.
Yeah.
6.6 and 5.8, 6.5, 6.2.
Yeah. So they vary a little bit, but if anything, probably just a little bit anabolic. Okay. Um, and and I guess as a guide too, the more the saliva is below 6.4, the you can almost guarantee the less bile is moving. Okay, so 6.4 is the cutoff for saliva. You don't want to be any lower than that. If you are, you can probably almost guarantee that your liver's struggling or your gallbladder's struggling. You're not getting much movement with the bile. Okay,
Okay, so it's still not working. Darn it.
not as maybe not as well as it could be. You want to get consistently above 6.4.
Yeah. I
Okay.
just can't seem to get there quite. And my blood pressure's been running really low too.
Yeah. Well, that's interesting.
Like a 50 differential.
It's 50 differential. Yeah.
When, yeah. Well, because you subtract the diastolic from the
Systolic.
systolic, right?
Yeah. So what's your systolic?
So, well, here from August 13th, I had 102 over 66.
Yeah. So it's still a bit low.
And then when I stood up, it went to 122 over 73.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's just getting some more balance in that system. That's more than anything. I mean, adrenals, electrolytes, depending on what's going on with the electrolytes. And you probably, like you said, if you're running a little bit anabolic, you may not be getting those minerals into your system
Right.
as well as you could be.
But it's been 90 over 60.
Yeah, that's a bit low. Yeah. Once we get
98 over 60, yeah.
if we look here, if we look on our cheat sheet, I don't know where it's gone now. Where are we? Oh, I've got rid of it. Doesn't matter. I put in there anything below 58 diastolic for a lot of people is depression.
Yes.
Too low.
Yeah, that's pretty low.
Yeah. All right. Okay. Well, let's move here. So we've got a blood type A. We talked a little bit about that. Okay. Remembering, low stomach acid. It's a red flag. So I'm always looking. I'm already thinking digestion, imbalances. Like as far as the chemistry imbalance, pH balance, and whatnot. Scale of 1 to 10, how Eva's feeling is pretty good. 8. That's considering all these things here. It's pretty good that she's feeling an 8. So that's good. That tells us there must be some robustness there, because she's not sort of rolling over and passing out. She's feeling pretty good. Okay. And can you still hear Linda? Can you still hear me? You there, Linda?
Yeah, I'm here. I can hear you. I had
That's
just
okay.
muted
No,
myself
that's
for a
okay.
while.
Yeah, I just thought I might have lost you. All right. So we're coming down here. So I mean, this is one of the reasons why I thought it would be a good idea to do a case study. There's a lot of stuff going on, and when I see, and sometimes I have 3 pages of this stuff, from people, and it's stuff you just can't deal with it all at once. All right. So I'm when I'm asking for symptoms, obviously it's going to give me some information. I try not to initially not to focus too much on the issues because they can start throwing you. Now we start looking at one thing, while the MTHFR, the gene mutation, if we start looking into that too much, we start focusing on that and what we should or shouldn't be doing. It's easy to get thrown off track pretty quick as far as focusing on the fundamentals, is which I want to do. And then once we get the fundamentals in place, we start looking at some of these things that say, well, okay, maybe this is having a big impact, because a lot of people with these gene mutations, they have no problems at all. A lot of people say, for instance, with these gene mutations, they say, well, MSM is one of the first things people say don't take. I have plenty of people with these gene mutations, they have MSM and they're fine. It helps them. So just as I go through these things, I need to consider them, of course. I mean, iodine deficiency. Well, you're going to have iodine deficiency. Let's just have a very quick look over here, and we have a look at the pHs, 6 and 6.2. Well, we're never going to get to 6.4, are we? as far as an average with those numbers. We're not going to get to 6.4. How are we going to get iodine? We're not going to get it. You need 6.3 to 6.5, I think it is. So, you know, when we see these things, you know, do I zoom in and go, whoa, iron deficiency? Let's pump iodine into this person, or do we just have a look at the chemistry to see, well, do we have the ability to get it in the first place? It's like, you know, like a lot of mineral deficiencies. Well, if you're not well and you're talking to me, or you're doing this, you know, you're seeing a practitioner. Well, of course you're going to be deficient in minerals. You know, so am I that concerned? Well, not really, because not when I know that the you know the pHs are out. The pHs are out. Well, it doesn't matter. It's no good just taking it because you're not going to get it. So we work on getting the chemistry right. We work on getting those pHs right, so that we actually know that we have the chemistry. We have a body that when we do take the iodine, or we're taking iodine, or we're taking iodine foods or whatever, that we're actually going to get it. Same as the minerals. You know, taking this amount of zinc or this amount of this or this amount of that, it's pointless. As far as I'm concerned, it's pointless. It's you're trying to put fuel into a different grade of fuel into a car that's broken. It's not going to make much difference. Okay, so we have to have the chemistry. This is why we are deficient in the first place for a lot of people. And so we always go back to keep it simple to start with, and then we refer back to, I'm going to go through this now, but then we go back and say, right, now we've got some basics in place, we've got some fundamentals in place. Now we need to start looking a little bit deeper and to see if any of this stuff can help us problem solve. All right. So chronic fatigue. Well, we're going to have, there's a lot of stuff going on with, I mean, look at digestion. Look at that. There's a lot of parasympathetic nervous system, no minerals. So of course, we're going to have some fatigue and maybe chronic fatigue. But do I focus on that directly? No. We've got to focus on fixing these imbalances and see if we can make sense out of some of these symptoms. All right. Fibromyalgia. I mean, there's a lot of controversy over that, what it is, what it isn't. But once again, we'll start if we start looking into it and reading about it and going, oh, you should do this or you shouldn't do that, we're going to start throwing everything off whack again. All right. So, okay, come down a little bit more. Teeth grind. Eva, how's that going with the teeth grinding? Is that still happening?
Actually, I think that's stopped a little bit. I still have a lot of tension there, but yeah. I don't think I'm grinding as much, and maybe that's due to Nepronol. I don't know.
Yeah, it may
or
be.
Stopping my cortisol. I was taking cortisol, and that was making my blood pressure really high.
It was.
Now I stopped taking the cortisol and birth control, and now it's really low.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So, memory loss. Now, when we say memory loss, are you talking? Just explain. When you say, are you talking like foggy brain, or are you talking about actually?
Oh, just not being able to remember people's names or something I did just a short time ago.
Yeah, so just a little bit. Yeah, foggy and stuff like that. Anxiety, mild depression. That's. I mean, God, you can. There's 1,000 different reasons for that can happen. So. Dizziness when going from sitting to lying, well, adrenals, lack of minerals, of course. So infrequent headaches, frontal and neck.
They've went away a little bit.
Hey?
They went away. They've went away.
Yeah. Okay.
Nepronol or.
Yeah, but one of the things with Nepronol, it can have that effect. It can. One thing I like about Nepronol, it does. It's one of these things you can take because it's a systemic. Systemic enzymes and proteolytic enzymes in there. It's got so much good stuff. You just don't know what it's going to do, so you just don't know. And or more often than not, you start doing that, and some of these things start getting better. You don't know specifically what it has done, but it doesn't matter. It's done it, and who cares? It's helping. It's once again, it's clearing the Nepronol. It's clearing. It's clearing that system. It's enabling the body to do what it needs to do, clearing the system, clearing out the, any scar tissue, clearing out the fibrin, which is really, really important because fibrin is a clotting agent. If we have lots of fibrin, which will typically be from inflammation from the liver and stuff like that, of course, but if we have the fibrin, we're not going to have circulation. If we're not going to have circulation, how is anything going to happen? So we start removing that, we start enabling some circulation, and then suddenly these things start fixing themselves, and that's what we want to do. Otherwise, we tend to have so much noise, and we get to the situation like people say, well, is this disconnected, or is this connected and disconnected? Well, yeah, everything's connected. Do we want to look any further? We can come up with another 500 things. Who cares? It doesn't matter. This is all noise, and you're never going to know with some of it, the direct relationship. The big direct relationship is with a body that doesn't have the fundamentals and the foundation in place for these things to happen. So let's make sure we're hydrated. Let's make sure we have circulation. Let's make sure we have cell membrane balance. Let's make sure we have some electrolytes. Let's make sure we have these things in place, and then see what happens. Do we still have problems? Well, then we need to look deeper, and we need to get a little bit more clever. But more often than not, if we focus on getting these things right, you will find a lot of this other stuff will come good, because it's these are what we need to focus on. These are the numbers behind these things. Okay, and it's so easy to get taken off track and focus on this and focus on that and focus. No, we focus on this, but this is going to give us some clues and some. Obviously, we need to understand this, but initially, especially when we're starting the protocol, and especially with someone like Eva, when there's a lot of stuff going on, we just got to start off very, very simply and start off with the very, very basics. All right, and what will happen? And when I work with clients over a 12-month period, I get to see this. It's magical. Because more often than not, 90% of the time, we get those improvements. It does happen, but it takes time, because we don't rush in and try and, oh my God, we got this going on, we got this going on, we go, oh, what about this, or what about, who cares? It's all noise, all right? Excessive air hunger, constantly feeling short of breath, blah, 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 lack of oxygen. And if we look at I think with Eva, we come down here. She's quite strong, slow oxidizer, and look at the sugars. Obviously, a big one with the sugars, 101 is a little bit high. Sugar displaces oxygen. I'm not saying that's the only answer, but it's one of the, it's a key number. If we got any issue with oxygen, well, let's have a look at what the glucose is. It's going to be my first thing, because sugar displaces oxygen in the bloodstream. Okay, and obviously circulation and all this sort of stuff. First thing I look at, all right, because what doesn't matter what you do, it's fundamental. Let's fix that. Do you still have an oxygen problem? Yeah, we do. Okay, well then we look a little bit deeper. But we got to look at the damn obvious first, and that's what no one's doing. They're all focusing on the noise, and sometimes you get it right, or you might get it right for a little bit, and then it goes wrong again. And I talk about this a lot, about the foundation. We got to build this. No one wants to build a foundation. I want to answer for this and answer for that. Oh, it's great, but we're trying to build this beautiful house, this beautiful, robust person, but we have no foundation. So what's going to happen? It's going to start falling down again. All right, and we may be able to get this wonder, whiz-bang pill supplement, magical supplement to do this for you or to do that for you. But yeah, if you don't have that foundation, it doesn't matter. You're gonna break down somewhere else, because you've got to have the foundation. And it's it's a process to do that. And a lot of people don't want to do that process. They just want an easy fix. And gallbladder, once again, as soon as I see gallbladder, I'm looking down here, and I'm looking for passing gas and whatnot. Burping, bloating, passing gas, constipation, all this sort of stuff. So we know, once again, it's a digestive thing. Um, and we know we've got to, get some movement in there. If I see gallbladder, and right next to that is liver, okay? And as Eva's put in there, gallbladder, liver. But the first thing I say when I've got gallbladder is, well, you're going to have liver. You're going to have congested liver, no doubt. And if you're going to have congested liver, you're going to have crap going back into the bloodstream. If you're going to have crap going back in the bloodstream, you are quite possibly going to have problems with weight. Not all the time, but more often than not, because the liver, the system can't deal with this. So what does it do? It wraps it up into a fat cell and stores it away in the tissue, and it will not let that go.
Right now, I'm having trouble gaining weight.
Yeah. It's not always.
I'm down to 99
Yeah. Okay.
pounds.
Okay. So with you,
So I don't know what to eat really, because I don't want to eat sugar. I don't want to eat junk.
no, well, because with the gallbladder, you're
I
not.
don't want to eat protein because
Yeah, you're not
I'm a
getting.
slow oxidizer.
Well, yeah, but you need to get fats. With the gallbladder, it's responsible for fat assimilation. So, and let's just go back over here just quickly. Hang on, let's just move that up so we can get it out of the way. Yeah, a little bit anabolic. So, remembering the cell membrane permeability. Imbalance. This is a lipid imbalance, and we come down here. We know we've got passing gas, so we come over here. We know we've got some gallbladder stuff. So, you're always going to struggle if you're not getting your fats in the first place. All right. So,
What kind of fats would you suggest?
well, you need. I mean, do you eat meat?
I do.
Yeah. Well, the animal fats are best.
Animal
So,
fat, yeah.
uh, and out of animal fat, probably the best for a slow oxidizer is probably lamb more than anything. Lamb it's got some really good fats in lamb. As you probably know, when you cook lamb, you get a lot of fat with lamb. It's good fat. But lamb is quite easy to digest for a slow oxidizer. Anything, not too red, and I know lamb's pretty red, is pretty dark, but it's not. It's an easy meat to digest. But I mean, for instance, you sat down and try to eat rump steak or T-bone steak or something like that. For blood type A and slow oxidizer, you're gonna use up more energy than you're gonna get out of it. And you'll still have some good fats in there, but you're taxing your digestive system. All right, in the process. So you're just making it all a little bit hard. So you're going to make it as easy as possible. All right. So I think a blood type A. I mean, I'm a blood type A. I don't just eat a plant-based diet. It's got to be fairly high in plant-based. But if I focus on lamb, maybe a little bit of chicken. But a blood type A typically doesn't do well on chicken, fish, but lamb more than anything because of the fat and it's easy to digest. All right. But once again, we've got to try and get that bile moving. We've got to try and get saliva pH up above 6.2, 6.3, 6.4. So it's 6.2 at the moment. That needs to come up. So maybe some beet flow flushes. If that doesn't work, well, then maybe you've got to get some coffee suppositories or do some enemas or whatever. Maybe we've got to get some, oh God, what are we talking about here? Choline to help push the liver. Okay, it's just a process. That's because you're taking a beet flow. You're doing a beet flow. Have you done a beet flow flush?
I've done it 3 times now, twice
Yeah.
in one day and then once on another day.
Did you
Yeah.
notice? Did you notice any improvements in pH of the saliva?
A little bit, but
Yeah. See, you may need to move towards either coffee suppositories or enemas and stuff like that to really get things moving. All right, because at 6.2, it's not. So it's not only the fact that we're not getting bile moving, we don't have the chemistry because of bile and the meeting the acidic chime from the stomach and getting that 6.4 average is important to get your minerals, and you're lacking in minerals. So it's not just about, oh, we can't get our fats. It's the fact that we can't get our chemistry either, our pHs. Okay. So just use those numbers as a guide to try and get as close as possible you can to that 6.4. And if you're doing things that are moving away, want to stop doing them and focus on the ones that are moving more towards. This is why the more measuring we do, the better. But you may need to get into the coffee enemas and stuff like that. I know for some people that's a bit full on, but I tell you what, it's very powerful stuff, especially with people struggling with gallbladders and with sticky bile and congested liver and whatnot, because the enemas will really open things up and get things flowing, and you will probably you might need. I think you need to do that. If you do that and you get things moving, and then we're still having problems, well then we've got to start looking at saying, well, maybe there's another reason for your saliva to be 6.2. It's a little bit acidic. What's going on there? Maybe we're just running a little bit too anabolic. All right. Now I know this. I'm going to explain why. I've explained it before, but you probably won't have the connection. Remembering an anabolic, all right, produces it ferments for energy more than using oxygen. It can't get oxygen, right? So it has to ferment, intracellular fermentation or glycolysis. It ferments. So I can't get the oxygen, so I'm going to have to ferment for sugars. When I do that, I produce lactic acid. When I produce lactic acid, my tissues start getting a little bit acidic, and my saliva represents my tissues, whereas urine represents the blood in general. All right. So these are the things we look at as we go deeper and deeper. Okay, because we just don't know. We don't know. We've got some numbers, but until we start doing things and start to react and start to measure, it's hard. Sometimes it's harder to know. We've got to do something. We've got to see how the body reacts, and the way in which the body reacts then can give us some clues as to what do we do the next step. All right. We don't just jump in and do everything to start with. We just do the basics, the fundamentals, and the fact that you have got gallbladder liver discomforts and we have a 6.2 would give me the priority, would be like, well, let's get bile moving, as opposed to it's a serious anabolic issue. Okay, because we go up here with the anabolic, although you've got an anabolic imbalance, it's not crazily anabolic, so it's not. Whereas we do know that we've got this going on with the gallbladder, so you can pretty well bet that your bile's struggling, all right, and you're not getting the fats that you need. So that's what we work on. That becomes a priority, and I've said it before, and I'll keep saying it. Knowing what to do isn't that difficult. It's the sequence in which you do these things is where the magic happens. All right, so it's not just knowing what to do, it's making sure that we're not doing things, we're not running ahead doing things when we haven't looked at the basic things below that we haven't enabled what you're doing to actually work. So we're just we're wasting our time. This is where everyone's at, because people are doing things without knowing where their body is, and sometimes they're lucky because it's just by fluke, and more often than not, they're forever struggling because they don't know. I don't know why it doesn't work. There's a lot of people have a lot of problem with potassium. Well, if you have a cell membrane issue, you're going to have a problem with potassium. When you do a potassium test, if you do potassium inside the cells or potassium outside the cells, it's going to be all over the place if you have a cell membrane issue. So if we do a test and we go, well, we don't have potassium, we don't have much potassium, but the first thing I'm going to look at is cell membranes. Next thing I'm going to look at is protein digestion. So it's a process. A lot of people will just go, oh, take more potassium. Potassium's so easy to get, it's not funny. If we've got digestion working, because we need to be able to digest protein to be able to get potassium. All right, so we don't just take potassium. And this is what a lot of people do. We say, well, let's have a look. Why don't we have it? Is it a, even going with potassium, even being in a different part of the world with a different pressure system, gradient, and weather pattern, is going to have an influence of how much potassium's inside or outside your cell. Hot or cold is going to have an influence. Cell membrane permeability issues are going to have a massive influence. If you're catabolic or you're anabolic, it's going to have a big. So you just make sure you've got those covered before you run ahead and start doing this or do that. All right. So once again, it gets back to just focusing on the basics.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
The cream of tartar that you use in an adrenal cocktail,
Yeah.
will reduce blood pressure. Am I correct? Can it reduce your blood pressure?
Well, good for some. It may not for others.
Right.
Yeah. I don't know. I don't know if it will do it.
I thought I read that somewhere or heard that, but
I'm not sure.
I know I need potassium, but my blood pressure's low. So what do you do?
Well, the best thing to do is not listen to anybody and try it and see what it does to your blood pressure. Did it move it? And that's what I say to people. People say, "Oh, but this does that." Well, how do you know it does that? Yeah, but I read it somewhere. Well, does it do it for you? Should I eat oranges?
Right.
Well, I don't know. Eat an orange and measure your glucose an hour and a half later, see if it makes what difference. I don't know. You know what I mean?
Well, I was taking the adrenal cocktail, and then my blood pressure's low all of a sudden. I don't know if that has something to do with it.
So you just need to do a little bit of experimenting with that. Because it's so easy to get thrown off when you do these things, and everyone's going to tell you something different. As you get on any Facebook page, and I mean, look at the people that I get feedback from different things on my Facebook group. It's just like, who knows? I don't know. Who are you? I don't know who you are. I don't know what your measurements are. But the easiest thing to do is to, when those sorts of things happen, is, well, what does it do for me? Let's measure. And if it becomes a problem, whereas you were struggling with low blood pressure in the first place, well, then you need to put more focus in that area and maybe, be very strict on what you're doing and make sure there's nothing else you do, so there's no other variables, and then just play around with it. Take some bicarb. They do it on its own. Take half a teaspoon, whatever. Just watch it. What's your blood pressure before? What's it afterwards? Did it have an effect? If it did, well, yes, it does. If it didn't, no, it doesn't.
Okay, try it by itself.
Yeah, I mean, you can try that. It's not going to, just try stuff and see if it's relevant to you or not, because you will find. And one thing I found when I started getting into this work is there ain't no book that tell you anything about any of this stuff, and everybody's telling you something different. Everybody's correct for themselves, but then there's an assumption, and it's a dangerous assumption. People giving feedback, and someone jumping on a website and going like, "Oh, I've got this going on. What do I do? Oh, you do need to do this," but that's based on this person, not you. There wasn't even a question about the chemistry, the blood pressures, the sugar readings. What's going on? This is what makes it so hard, and this is why I'm reluctant to answer lots of questions, and this is why I always say, well, it all depends. I don't know. Do my testing. I don't know who you are. There's no such thing as standard person. There is no such thing. So what works. If I have an orange, right? I'm a slow oxidizer. I'm going to be very, very careful with sugars, and I can't eat oranges. They'll throw me right out of whack, where some people can eat oranges. But if you ask someone on a website or whatever, or read about it, oh well, oranges, because you've got the fiber, there's no problems. Well, for who? Who are we talking about? We're not talking about me, because you haven't tested me. So just test everything, because you'll find a lot of stuff that what you should or you shouldn't do according to popular belief, and things like the gene mutations are a typical one. Don't do this, don't do that. You must do this, you must do that. Well, yeah, you can use some guidelines, but at the end of the day, try it. And I've done that with MSM. I mentioned before. With MSM's a big one. With the methyl donor, it pushes methylation even further, and yet people are benefiting from it. So why would I say don't take? I put MSM in Eva's. Try it. And
I have been taking that.
either it'll
Yes.
work or it won't, you know. I don't know, but let's try it. But when we do try stuff, let's be as objective as we can, know where we're at, have an understanding, where we're at, how we feel, and have an understanding of some of the numbers, and then you don't go into a lab and do it and start doing experiments without having this stuff. So well, what was the impact? Otherwise, it's just so subjective. Um, and well, I took, this is a typical example. I work with some old ladies that quite often I get old ladies I work with. They can't do the test. They won't do any of the testing and stuff like that. And I'll just ask them a question about, it might even be just over the phone. I'll just say, look, are you eating any salt? Because they go, oh, I've got no energy and all this going on. I say, and typical with old people, especially old ladies, because what happened is they've lost their husband to a heart attack years ago. And Bill, he used to eat too much salt, and the doctor said, you had a heart attack, you were eating too much salt, blah blah blah. So what happens is they stop eating salt. They don't have any salt because they think it's going to kill them. And then you tell them, well, you know, eat some good salt, and they eat some good salt. Then they ring you up a week later and think you're God because you've turned them around. You haven't done anything. All you've done is just given some because they made an assumption because they were told or they listened that they thought this was bad for Bill, and Bill was probably eating lots of table salt anyway, not proper good salt. So it's just have just get into the habit of a clean slate and just say, well, just assume nothing. And if you do make an assumption, test it. All right. So if I assume, like I said, typically people say, oh, is this good for you? Or is this bad for you? Or well, this good for your sugars? Or I don't know. Test it. You're making an assumption, and then you'll know. All right. I have people that get pushed over the top from eating a banana or eating a what do you call it? A kiwi fruit's a big one, or an orange. All right, but they if they read the books or read the paper and see the experts say it's no problem. Well, it might not be for a lot of people, but for some it is. So you just test it. All right, just get into the habit of experimenting. And this is the good thing about these numbers, having these numbers. It's you have some tools to be able to, you might not see it with one test, one sample. You might need to do 10 samples over 2 weeks, whatever, however many you need to do. But then you'll get it. And then you go like, I know, all right? Getting back to what I was saying before, when I wake up in the morning, every morning, I'm so sensitive. I'm so aware of my energies, my subtle energies. And if they're out, I know my brain's going, what did I do? What did I eat? What did I eat? There's something's not in. Got it. All right, I did this or I didn't do that or I ate this and I shouldn't have or I drank it, whatever. I'll know. Okay? You just get to know yourself that way. All right, let's just go through this. So the blood glucose reading, 101, a little bit high. A doctor would say, no problem. Crap. No problem according to the average of the sick people out there that base these numbers on. 101 is too high. Remembering anything to do with oxygen, all right, not getting into the body. You're also anabolic in the first place. All right, that's not getting oxygen to the tissues. Well, what about getting oxygen into the bloodstream in the first place? With 101, you are going to be struggling a little bit. This is why people with higher sugars would be low oxidizers. All right, oxygen, not getting oxygen to your body, you're going to have body pain, and you're going to have acidic tissues. You're going to have low energy because your body's not producing energy through oxidation, through the proper oxidative process of energy production, which is 17 times less energy produced through fermentation. You're not getting the oxygen to the brain. You're going to feel like crap. Okay, odds are you're going to be depressed, or you're going to feel depressed, or you're going to feel a bit depressed. You can have some anxiety. If you want to have some anxiety, just stop breathing. You start panicking. Okay, so what's the biggest thing? I look at, well, sugars. Let's work on the sugars as well. So let's try and get those down. Do we still have that problem? Because sugars in the bloodstream is one of the biggest factors I see and really pushing the body out of whack. It's not funny because it's, like I say, it's not only the fact that it displaces it displaces oxygen in the bloodstream, sugar and alcohol. This is why this crap about 1 glass of wine a day or 2 glasses of wine is good for you because it's got a bit of grape juice in there or whatever, is absolute rubbish because the alcohol and sugar, they both can't carry a charge, right? They're dead, they're chemically dead. So you're actually, what you're doing when you're adding this into your bloodstream, you're covering your bloodstream in the sugar and the alcohol produces this effect. It's called the oh God, I've gone blank. It doesn't matter. I've written about it before, but it creates um, it, 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 it impacts on the negative charge. Every blood cell and every particle in solution has a negative charge around the outer edge, and that's what keeps them dispersed, right? The zeta potential, right? If you bring negative against negative, what do you get? You get dispersion. It pushes away, all right? As soon as you start adding sugar or alcohol, especially because they can't carry a charge, so they interrupt the charge. And what they do, they put it's like a bit of a coating on these cells. And what happens is you take away some of that negativity, so you get the attraction. So all of a sudden, you get particles that start to attract, and this is when you get agglutination, you get clotting. Okay, zeta potential starts to be compromised, and that's from sugar and alcohol. This is one of the reasons why you have a sugar episode or you have an alcohol episode, you feel like crap for 2 or 3 days afterwards. Right? One of the biggest reasons for that is because you're not getting the oxygen, and it takes about 3 days for your body to rebalance. All right, so it's a big one. It's right at the top here. Okay, so we work on that. We work on the getting the blood circulating and getting more oxygen into the bloodstream and getting it to be able to be released into the tissues, into the brain. All of a sudden, my God, I got more oxygen to I've also got to work on my cell membranes. Of course, I've got to open those up, but I'm getting oxygen into the system now. I'm feeling better. Everything just flows. All of a sudden, all these things start working better. All we've done is enabled your bloodstream to be able to carry more oxygen and to have more circulation. It's so basic, but it's so, God, no one's looking at this stuff. There's an assumption that our cell membranes are cycling as they should do. There's an assumption that our blood has oxygen in the system. There's an assumption that blood can release it. These are all assumptions that most people are making. And they're completely wrong. Well, for a lot of people they are. Or at least test them, fix them, and then move on and see where you're at. Okay. All right, let's move down here. What are we looking at here? The resting systolic, because it's a bit low, 112. It's not chronically low. It may fluctuate a little bit. Your pulse 78 is pretty damn good. Resting diastolic, it's not too bad. Standing systolic, standing pulse is jumped up. You can see that when you get a jump from resting pulse to standing pulse of anything more than about 12, what have we got there? 80, well, it's quite a bit higher. This is when, I won't go into detail here, but there's a different type. It gets really confusing. It's called potassium excess acidosis. And this is when your urine is coming through quite alkaline. But we don't need to get too much concerned about it, but it's related to just poor digestion, all right, more than anything. Okay, so that can give you, when you get those differences, those big differences between resting and standing pulse, it's usually it's what we call, and if you go back into the pH lesson, you'll see I talk a bit about that, potassium excess acidosis, all right, but don't worry about it. It's digestion, fixed digestion. We know digestion needs to be fixed. Breath rate 13, that's a little bit low, but for a lot of people, if I was to average out, most people that I work with, they probably average more like 11 or 10, or 11 or 12. So 13 isn't that bad. It's lower than it should be. And once again, that'll be down to the sugars. Okay. Now sugars in the bloodstream attract calcium from the tissues, and the calcium is the most alkalizing substance on this planet. So it'll alkalize the bloodstream and the body will slow down breathing because it wants to hold on to CO2. Okay, so but it's not a great concern. It's not, when I say it's not a great concern, it's not something that would freak me out and say, oh, we need to jump on that. If it was 9, 8, 7, I have people with 5, I would be looking at things like some phosphoric acid drops or something like that. All right, so don't worry about that. It's not a, it's not in dire straits. It's not a priority. Okay. We come down to the saliva and urine pH. These are very important numbers, of course. Saliva being 6 point. We know that bile's probably not moving at all. All right. These are inverted, quite anabolic. They're very close together. And 6 and 6.2, you don't have to have a calculator. Be very good at your math to know that you ain't going to get 6.4 out of that. All right. No matter how you look at it. Okay. So important number is saliva to move up, and the urine probably to move down just a little bit. Okay, so whatever you're doing, and you've got to work on the liver and gallbladder for this, monitor these numbers, making sure they're not going the opposite way than you want them to go. We don't want them to get worse. Yeah?
This is Linda. Can I interrupt just one question?
Sure.
The testing for that, I know you should do it away from food and et cetera, but what if you don't?
You need to.
Okay.
It's very hard to be able to correlate otherwise. So you really you need to do it away from food. Ideally, you don't do it first thing in the morning. Like a lot of people say, do it first thing in the morning. It's very hard to determine what's going on there because you're measuring yesterday's waste and all this sort of stuff. But you really need to be, with the pHs, try and be consistent with the timing that you do it. So if you do it at, 11 o'clock one day, do it at 11 o'clock the next day. And try and be consistent. If you do it at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, do it at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. So you're comparing apples with apples.
Okay.
Okay, just bear with me. I've just got to plug this computer in. Where is it? Okay. Yeah, just bear with me a minute. For some reason. No. For some reason my computer is switching on. Okay. That's got it. Yeah, that's good. All right. Yeah, so just try and be consistent. So otherwise, there are some variations. And that's okay as long as we understand those. So but we do one at 11 o'clock in the morning, one at 3 o'clock in the morning, in the afternoon. Next day we do one at, at 5. We are going to have some variations. We just want to, they can just confuse things a little bit, all right? And the other thing too, Linda, is we just need to we're looking for trends more than anything. All right. If it's, is it low or is it high? Are they pretty close together or are they pretty far apart? All right. So, sometimes we do need to arrange, a number of tests to try and average out what, does it average out at 6.2 or 6.3 over a 5-day period? And the saliva, urine, does it average out at 5.6 or 5.7? If there's a little bit of variation, just average it out. A little bit like blood pressures. If it varies a little bit, just and it can sometimes vary, especially with these, cheaper machines. Just average them out. It doesn't matter necessarily to get an exact number. It's are we high, are we low? The only thing with the pH is the exact number we are trying to aim for is that 6.4, all right, which is total body, which accommodates, your tissues and your blood, as opposed to just measuring your blood. Okay. Saliva stringing down. Well, of course, that's potentially candida. It's not a scientifically proven method of measuring or detecting or diagnosing candida, but it's just a sign that there may be some candida going on. And just remember with candida too, just, we've all got some candida. Candida is an important part of our digestive process. It's just, do we have an overgrowth? Is it causing us problems? Some people have a lot of candida. It's no problem. It's no big deal. All right. So it's just another number. It's another marker to say, okay, let's just keep that in mind. Maybe that's going on. It's just do we have anything else that tells us that might be a problem, or do we not? Maybe when we start working on the gut, we add in some Synthol AMD or something like that. That's going to help fix it up and balance it. Who knows? So it's not, not necessarily a big problem, but it's just something to look at. Demographic line red. That's a parasympathetic marker, and we know from here that that Eva's quite parasympathetic here. Okay, and the pulse pressure. If you were to do nothing else when you're measuring for parasympathetic, just do the diastolic, the pulse pressure difference between diastolic and systolic, and if it's below 37, if you did that on its own, you would be pretty sure you're parasympathetic, and you've got the red mark on the demographic line as well. So you're pretty damn sure if you do that, a few times every now and then. It's pretty easy to do the line on your arm or something. If it's consistently red, you're more parasympathetic than anything else, all right? But the pulse pressure is the big one. The other numbers, they're just added. They're just a little bit more weight added to it. But it's there are people that do this test. All they do is the pressure differential, and if it's below 37, well, you're parasympathetic. End of story. Okay. So we might need to do something just to spike that up a bit, just to spark things up a bit, I should say. Right, just to fire things up a little bit with the nervous system. It's a little bit lethargic, a little bit stuck in the rest and digest, and it's not even doing that very well because it don't have the ability to digest. Okay, so all right, we're coming down here. Let's scoot through here because we got about another 20 minutes or so. I'm going to have to go at 10 o'clock, but that's it. So I'm going to go scoot through here. Do you have suffered depression? Well, you're going to feel depressed. You're not going to feel too good if you're not getting oxygen into the system. You're not going to feel too good if you don't have minerals in the system. So, let's look at these fundamentals first. And you're not going to feel too good if you're not producing very much energy. You're not going to feel very good if you have aches and pains in the body, if you're producing a lot of lactic acid, all this sorts of stuff. Okay, one of the best ways to feel better and to have more clarity in your thinking, in your mind, and your mental clarity, and just your mental well-being, and clarity in the body as well, is oxygen. All right, sugar, and it's this sugar. You get this sugar down, you will feel the difference. Actually, one of the things you can try, Eva, and I know if you've ever tried it, and that's what's that tea? It's there's a tea you can take. Oh God. Oh, I'm gonna have to let you know.
Gynostemma, isn't it, Mark?
No, it's like a you use it to help heal bones.
Like a nettle or
no, it's like a these it's like a big leaf. It's like a big green leaf. It's you use the root. Oh God, and you make a tea from it.
Not comfrey.
Yes, comfrey. Right. It's
comfrey.
It's getting late here. My mind is just like going a little. Okay. Now, comfrey tea. All right. I wouldn't advise taking lots and lots of comfrey, but comfrey root tea. This is something you can try. All right. If you can get some organic comfrey. I've done this because I'm very, very careful now with my sugars, more so than I used to be even 6 months or a year ago. All right, I'm very, very careful. But I used to have problems. I used to drink wine and all this sort of stuff, and I had problems with sugar. I would drink maybe even half a cup of comfrey tea, and comfrey will knock sugars straight out. Okay, it'll drop your sugars really quick. Okay. And it's not something I recommend you do as an ongoing thing, but it's something you can do for just to see how you feel, to see if it is a problem, to see if it did make you feel a little bit better, if you did have that clarity. All right. Sometimes you'll find when you drink comfrey and you bring the sugars down, sometimes people with higher sugars, because they're lacking in oxygen, their body's in a little bit of stress, and their throat can be a little bit creaky. Okay, because that's what happens when you get stressed. People that's really stressed and anxiety, you listen to their voice, right? They're very creaky. It's because lack of oxygen. And when you suddenly get that more oxygen, your voice gets much more deeper and much more clarity and much more clear. It's because you have that extra oxygen. But you will feel that difference. So it's worth trying. Right? It ain't gonna hurt you. I know people saying, yeah, you shouldn't drink comfrey tea. It's poison. Well, if you drink loads of it, yeah, but it's not gonna hurt having a few cups every now and then, especially just to try this out. All right. Because it happens so quick. Okay, you're not sort of trying something and waiting 3 days to say, well, I don't know if it really worked or not. Maybe it did, maybe it didn't. You drink a cup of comfrey tea, and you'll know by the time you finished it if it's working on you, right? Because it will drop sugar like a brick. Okay, so it's just something you can try, and when we try these things, it's like, did it work or didn't work? It's not about getting things to work. It's about getting some feedback. If it didn't work, it's feedback. If it did work, it's feedback. All right? And it gives us a little bit more information. And if it didn't work, I know that comfrey tea will push sugars down. Well, it will work anyway. The comfrey tea would work. But the thing is, does it make you feel better? Do you get some more clarity? Does it open up your mind a bit? Does it make you? If it does, well, we know we're on the right track. If it makes you feel no different whatsoever, that's okay too. Because well, it's not the sugar that's causing you to feel like that. Okay, so it's we start doing some experimenting. We're playing around with stuff. All right, the general fatigue. Sugar. No oxygen. Okay, our energy production system is dropped right down. We're not producing much energy. We're going to have fatigue. We're going to feel like crap. So let's get that down and let's see, get some of these things fixed up, get the sugars down, open up the cell membranes, get these working, look at those pHs are getting where they should be, right? And you will start feeling better. I promise you. This stuff is it can be as simple as that. All right. When you start, everybody that I work with coaching, because we get to see these repeated tests and stuff like that, nearly all of them, especially the ones that do what I tell them to do, because some of them don't. It all comes together, and everything I talk about, I'm talking about now, you get to see that, and you get to say, oh my God, my numbers are moving up to where they should be, and I feel better. Yes, it's as simple as that. Okay, and who cares about the detail of specifically what happened, because you want to feel good, you want to feel better, and as your body starts feeling better, and as you start pushing these things back into balance, once again, you're giving your body the opportunity and enabling the body to heal you, and it's the only thing that can heal you. Now, I can't heal you, you can't heal you, no one can heal anybody. There's no such thing, I don't believe, really, in a healer. You are the healer. Your body is the healer, and this is what we are. We're nothing but healing machines. Our body is designed to do nothing but thrive. If it can't thrive, why? It's because it's prevented from doing so. So we need to enable the body to do so, and then it will heal. It will do all these wonderful things. It knows what to send, how much of this mineral, how much of that mineral, precisely where it needs to go, when it needs to go, and what quantities it needs to go. We can never, ever understand that by doing any testing and saying, well, we need this much. It's body works that out. This is where, healing, the body healing is incredibly complex. For us to fix the healing machine is so much easier. All right. We can fix the car, we can tune it up, we can add some spark plugs, and the car works so much better. But you don't need to know the intricacies of the car and all the parts and bits and pieces of why that's happened. It doesn't matter. You've enabled the car to do what it needs to do, and it does it. All right. Unless you're a mechanic, who cares? Okay. Cravings, minerals, cramps, minerals. Yeah, maybe cramps. Interesting with cramps. Also could be calcium issues as well there. And when I see cramps, I'm thinking minerals. I'm thinking could be magnesium, could be calcium related, could be lots of related. But one of the things when we have sugars, what are we doing with sugars? We're pulling calcium out of the tissues into the bones and into the bloodstream. Calcium always follows sugar. So if you've got high sugars in the bloodstream, you're going to have high calcium in the bloodstream. Okay, because they attract. This is why when people have a sugar episode, they get a herpes outbreak, coleslaw outbreak, all right? It's always after a sugar episode. Why? Because the sugars have left the tissues and now the viruses in the tissues can take over because there's no calcium to keep them intact, all right? So, once again, this is something that can be fixed up by fixing up the sugars. Once again, one thing, sugars, how many things are they influencing? Coagulation, circulation, oxygen delivery, you name it, has such an impact. So if you fix this one thing, you're going to fix so many other things in the process. Okay? I mentioned it many, many times before. Focus on fixing these key numbers, getting the key imbalance in place. Sit back, relax, and let the body do the magic, and it will. And you'll wonder why, and this is, all these things start happening, all these good things. All right, poor circulation. Okay, poor circulation. Of course you've got poor circulation because you have high blood sugars, all right, and you have anabolic imbalance. More than anything else, I can almost guarantee that's what it is. When you take the Nepronol, can help the circulation big time because the circulation could be caused by inflammation as well. This is another big thing, but it doesn't matter. The sugars are going to trump everything. You reduce that sugar, just playing around using some comfrey, and see if your circulation improves. You'll know immediately because you'll feel it in the brain if nothing else. All right? You'll feel a clarity. You'll feel a difference. Because now you have, we've got trillions of blood cells delivering oxygen to our system and taking away CO2 and God knows what else, all right? So immediately, you only don't have to have such a major effect on those blood cells, and instantly you feel a difference, okay? It's just chalk and cheese. The excess of, peeing and stuff like that, that's a very, very strong anabolic marker, and we know you're pushing a little bit anabolic, all right? When anabolic, the body, with an anabolic person, the body will tend to push a lot of the fluid through your kidneys, all right? Whereas a catabolic will tend to push it through the through your bowel. So a catabolic person has diarrhea, whereas an anabolic person will typically have constipation. Okay, and when the body is sending a lot of the water through the kidneys, we tend to have lower blood pressure. Okay, as opposed to a catabolic can have higher blood pressure because it's not pushing it. It's not getting rid of a lot of this. It's holding on to a lot of fluid. It's pushing it through. It's pushing it through the bowel. So there's just some connections there. Don't get, these are things you're going to need to see and hear repeated many times before they all sink in. So it's okay. Anxiety, if I was to inject lactic acid into a person that's never had any anxiety in their life, right, and you put lactic acid into the bloodstream, into the body, they're going to get instant anxiety. Okay, so what are you producing when you're anabolic? You're producing a lot of lactic acid. Okay, is it the only reason you've got anxiety? Who knows? But you're not going to get it unless you at least work on the anabolic imbalance, get rid of that lactic acid, increase the oxygen. Like I said, if you want to get anxious and panicky and stuff like that, start restricting oxygen, let alone anything else. And this is something that could have been happening for years. You just get used to it, and you're wondering what's going on. So anxiety, anabolic marker. There's a lot of other things too, but I look straight away. Have a look. What's going on here? We anabolic? Yes, we are. Ooh, that's just another marker, and it's a strong one. Slow to heal, interesting. Slow to heal. That could be a sugar thing too. Okay, could be a lot of things, but sugar especially is a big one there. Migraines, muscle loss. Interesting, muscle loss is more of a catabolic thing, but it's not just a catabolic thing. I'm not concerned about that when I see that, unless there's lots of other markers. It's okay. Probably more than anything, then for you, it's not necessarily a catabolic thing. It's just the fact that you're not digesting the protein very well, and your body's struggling for protein. Okay, and so digestion, and we know that's struggling. Your blood type A, you're struggling for hydrochloric acid. You're not breaking those proteins down. You're not getting those feel-good aminos either, probably. Okay, so you're going to feel a bit down. All right, or you possibly are, because you're not breaking these protein molecules down into amino acids and peptides and whatnot that are going to make you a lot of these, like the tyrosine, the phenylalanine. These are why I recommended here or somewhere. Phenylalanine somewhere.
Yeah, I have been taking that.
Yeah. Well, that's one of the aminos that your body needs.
I think the Nepronol just does amazing stuff too.
Yeah, Nepronol is just beautiful. It just freaks people out, the price of it. All right.
Yeah.
But it look, when I first started doing this, because Nepronol has such a big impact on my life. When I first got into this, I had a heart attack, and I had, like, you should see my blood pictures. I wish I still had them. I don't know why I didn't keep them. I've lost them and moving around and whatnot. But my live blood pictures I had incredibly high levels of inflammation from liver stress, liver congestion, lots of fibrin, and Nepronol was played a big part in probably saving my life, because I had other stuff going on there back then too. And when I did that and I started getting into this work, I vowed that everybody I work with is going to have the Nepronol to start with. But then I started working with people that didn't have any money, or they couldn't afford stuff. So I sort of drifted a little bit away from it, because I had so many people that say, well, yeah, but I can't. There was so much other stuff going on as well. But I'm starting to come back into that more and go, well, it's everybody I recommend it to. The feedback I get is just so good. It might even be, I get to the point where I just say, look, don't do anything other than take some Nepronol first and then come back and see me, because it's such a powerful, this is another example of enabling and getting some circulation, and clearing out the system, clearing out scar tissue, clearing out fibrin, clearing out proteins that are stuck in the lymphatic system. When you do that, all these good things start happening, fantastic stuff.
Maybe I should take more.
How much are you taking?
2 in the morning, 2 before I go to bed.
All right, take 3 to 4 before you go to bed. Don't worry about the morning.
Okay.
All right. I used to say in the morning and night. Now I'm saying take 3 to 4 just before you go to bed. All right. And then you wake up with a nice surprise, because you let it work on you while you're sleeping.
Oh wow. Hey Mark.
Increase my oxygen.
Yeah.
Just a plug for that Nepronol. I knew about that before I met you.
Right.
And it so happens that I have a batch on the way. It should be delivered today.
Okay.
Because I haven't had much money lately, but I'm supplement poor. I'll do that before anything else. So I finally got some more.
Fantastic.
Oh, you'll love it, Linda.
Oh my God.
I know. I've already used it a lot. Yeah.
Oh, you have. Good. Yeah.
When I first took Nepronol, I'll always remember, because I used to, when I was working, and I used to work in engineering projects and whatnot. I used to say to people, I say, have a couple of these capsules, right? And they'll take some capsules like two or three, and they'd be sitting down on the computer and I'd be saying, like an hour later or half an hour later, I'd say, how do you feel? They go, oh, I don't really know. I said, get up and walk around. And then they'd get up and walk around. They go like, oh, I feel a bit light, a bit funny, nice. I feel a bit like, of course you are, because you've got circulation. And all of a sudden, sometimes their eyesight will start getting a bit better. My eyes are getting a bit, that's because you've got very tiny capillaries in your eyes, and now you're clearing that out. You're getting circulation in the eyes. So, and when I first took Nepronol, I would feel from my feet upwards, I could feel it working up my legs, literally. This is why, I was so full on with Nepronol when I first started. Like I said, and then I got put off because no one would buy it. They say, well, I can't afford it. I couldn't believe the difference. And then when I looked at my blood, and I could see how it could had such a big impact on the fibrin, and then I realized, and it's just, so it's, I think with this work, there's so many things you can do, and sometimes there are different priorities. It can get, I would love to come up with just one standard sort of protocol, but you can't. There's always these different priorities. But I think with Nepronol, it's a bit like Synthol with the gut health and stuff like that. It's going to start to become, well, no, you just do that, and if you can't afford to buy anything else, just do that first, and then you start buying other stuff. All right, let's scoot through this, because what I'm going to do, I'm going to go through this, and we're going to have a quick look at the imbalance guide, and then we're going to have to wrap it up, and then we'll continue this. I'm doing another session. How I'm going to do, because I want to continue this with you guys as well. So I don't know, we'll still build this protocol, all right? So either if it's talking to you directly, or you'll see the recording, but I'm going to have to stop in about 10 minutes because I'm running out of time. But I'm going to go through here. We've had a good talk through this stuff. Hands normally cold, circulation. Improve that circulation. One thing when I see hands normally cold, or is it directly related to poor circulation? Maybe it is. We've got small capillaries in our fingers, and sometimes they can get cold. But one thing that a lot of people don't look at and never consider, and when I see this, I do consider it because I like to look at things differently. And one of the things I look at when I think of low cold hands, cold extremities, is I think about the pancreas. All right. Why do I think about the pancreas? And when I think about the pancreas, the first thing I look at is gallbladder, because I know if the gallbladder is suffering, the pancreas is going to be suffering. And if the pancreas is suffering, we're going to have sugar issues. We do. All right. So I'm just looking for these connections. I'm looking for validation. I'm looking for, does it make sense what I'm thinking of? Yes, it does. But very few people would be aware that the pancreas also produces alcohol. Right. And that it produces alcohol to help regulate body temperature. Okay, and you can read that in the John Barron information on the digestive lesson I did. He talks about this. Very few people know about that. I talk to people, they go, I never knew. Even people that have been working in this industry for years, they didn't know about that. Well, if you don't know about it, well, then knowing about it, understanding that, and seeing if there's any connections. Does it make sense? Do we have a pancreas that's struggling? I don't know. Do we have sugar problems? Yes. Do we have gallbladder problems? Yes. Do we have cold extremity problems? Yes. Well, maybe we have a pancreas problem as well. So you just mark it. You just mark it and be mindful and go, well, there could be a connection there. So I just, these are the things I look at. When I go through this, you start to understand that a lot of this work is about how you think about stuff more than anything else. Okay, how do we connect this stuff? How do we think about this stuff? So it really becomes a thinking technology, as opposed to me teaching you, what the pancreas does. You can buy a book to tell you what a pancreas does, or what the liver does. We have an idea what that does. The magic is thinking about it and being able to be to be able to make those connections. And when you do, you start to realize, you go, aha, damn, that makes so much sense. I didn't think about that before. That's what I want people to say, and they do all the time. All right, it's a simple stuff, but it's just thinking about it differently, and thinking about these things. You know, when we look at a cell membrane problem, the first thing you do is you think, well, what's cell membranes made out of? Lipids. What's responsible for lipids? Gallbladder. You know, and you look at there and you go, oh, we've got a gallbladder problem. Surprise, surprise. Okay, just some logic, some common sense, with some science thrown in, basic science. That's all this stuff is. Yes. This is where the simplicity comes in. It makes the complex problem so simple, as opposed to what so many people other people are doing, and they're trying to make this stuff so complex. You know, because they want to be gurus in this and gurus in that. And oh my God, it's so difficult. We need to know all these pathways. Forget about that. The body does all that for you. Let's get the body into the, you know, let the body worry about all that crap. Okay, coming down here, passing gas, once again, dead cert, gallbladder, bile, all right? And if we've got a bile problem, we're going to have a chemistry problem, we're going to have a pH problem. We know we have that. So we're not going to get our minerals. We're not going to get, and when I say we're not going to get our minerals, or we're going to struggle for minerals, of course we're still going to get some minerals. But then I think, okay, what's some of the most important minerals, and what's the minerals a lot of people are lacking? Well, iodine's going to be a big one. Okay, who out there prescribing iodine or not prescribing iodine without looking at the total body pH to understand if you have the chemistry to pick it up in the first place, because it's a heavy mineral. It's a very heavy element. It's one of the heaviest, same as iron, very hard to get. Okay, if you don't have good balanced pH, you're going to struggle. Even good balanced pH, even a perfectly working gallbladder, perfectly working liver, perfectly working stomach and acid and digestive system, you're still only going to get about 30% of the minerals and nutrition that you take in. All right, this whole nonsense about energy in, energy out, it's rubbish. It's like saying putting, you know, I put a liter of fuel into diesel into a diesel engine, and I'm going to get that equivalent energy out. No, because the diesel engine isn't very efficient. Well, nor's our bodies. Okay, so we're already behind the 8 ball to start with. Okay, is anybody hearing me? If you both turn your okay, that's okay. You're still there.
I can hear you.
Hearing you.
No, that's okay. That's good. I just thought I've done this before, you know, and I've gone blah 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 for about half an hour. And I've gone, oh no, I've talked to no one. How embarrassing. All right, let's come down here. Burping and bloating, always burping and bloating. You've got to ask the question, why are we burping and bloating? How can we be? Where's that gas come from? It can only come from really two things, fermentation and bacteria. All right, so where's that coming from? It's coming from the gut. Why is it coming from there? Because we don't have enough hydrochloric acid. We're not digesting properly. It's just a no-brainer. All right, so HCl, get that HCl up. Craving anything, it's the body looking for minerals, of course, and remembering in nature, sugar and minerals come together. Anything green out there is carbs and sugar. Yeah, it's carbs and minerals. The body knows that. That's why that's why it can crave for sugar sometimes. It's not looking for the sugar. It knows inherently that if I get the sugar, I'm going to get the minerals. But we know now, with all the processed food, that when we get the sugar, we don't get the minerals. So what does the body do? It asks for more mineral, it asks for more sugar, and then asks for more. This is where a lot of the obesity comes into it, because people don't understand the nature of the trap. They eat a meal that's nutritionally devoid of any minerals, and afterwards, and then they eat again 5 minutes later, and they go, I don't know, I just keep feeling hungry. You know, people say, well, you know, how terrible of you! You just you eat too much. You know, you're being a hog. You shouldn't be eating like this. You know, well, why are you doing? They don't know. They're hungry because they're not getting nutrition. The body said, eat more, eat more, eat more. If I've only got a quarter of the amount of the nutrition in the meal, I've got to eat 4 meals to get what the body needs to feel satisfied. So, you know, any sort of craving, it's just the body looking for, well, it may be looking for some, but it's looking for minerals. It's like they come together. Okay. The bowel movements is one bowel movement. It's not enough. So everything's a little bit too slow. That's probably down to more than anything low stomach acid. All right. Our bowels move at the speed of acidity. Okay. The more acid we are, the more fast we move. The more alkaline we are, the more slower we move. All right. So we know we're struggling with bile, and bile is alkaline. Well, we're going to have some, and we're going to have some acid in the stomach as well. But you can almost guarantee it's more of a with the one movement per day. It's because there's not enough acid. You improve that acid, stomach acid, and you'll get some more movements, and things will move through the system at the right speed. Not too fast, not too slow. 6.4 is where you want to be. All right, and then even though now this is where it gets a little bit more, and I'll just mention this because you might be thinking, yeah, but my urine's 6 and my saliva's 6, but that is quite low. But that's more to do with cell membrane imbalances than anything else, all right? Because of the lactic acid you produce as opposed to the digestive side of things. So I'll just quickly say that so that you know I know it's going to throw another spanner in the works as far as, oh God, now what? I've got to try and there's another factor to think about. But you know you'll get this stuff you'll get it after a while. All right, just remember saliva and urine pH doesn't necessarily have anything to do with your blood pH. All right, because your tissues or your saliva can be alkaline and acid because of other things going on more than the fact that, well, I'm either acid or alkaline in my bloodstream. Okay, this is why we have to look at everything. Frequently constipated, well, we talked about that before. Acid, get it moving. Some ascorbic acid, if you're not already taking some ascorbic acid, I'm not going to have time to go through your, we'll go through, because we're going to maybe, adjust this too, and we'll have, by next week, I'll have a better, more thought out protocol for you. But one of the things I put up here is ascorbic acid. I don't know if I've mentioned that to you before.
I've been taking that in vitamin C form, yeah. And
yeah.
I think I might be working my way to 2, so.
Yeah, good. Look, it might be in a formula, but what I like to do, especially with a little bit of constipation, that's to just take the ascorbic acid, just pure ascorbic. I mean, I don't like ascorbic acid for anything else, right? But it's for getting the bowels moving. It's brilliant. And if you ever come across kids, young kids that has constipation, even babies have constipation issues, give them a little bit of ascorbic acid. It's so harmless for that job, but it's so good. Why? Because it's acidity. Remember, things move at the speed of acidity. All right. The more pH is a measure. It's a measure of the resistance to the flow of energy. That's one way of looking at it with my work. The measurement, the understanding that it's a measurement of the resistance to the flow of energy. Alkaline slows things down. Acid speeds things up. All right. So someone manic and panicking and out of control and hot-tempered and all this sort of stuff, they're going to be acidic, guaranteed. All right. And because they've got so much, they've got there's no checking of their impulses. Everything's just going crazy in their system so fast they can't control it. Whereas alkalinity is completely the opposite. You're slower, you're more lethargic. Everything just slows right down. Okay, so we want that. This is why alkalizing is no good for you, because you go completely the opposite way. You're not only providing an environment in the gut for parasites and God knows what else to flourish because they need acid to keep them intact. You're slowing down energy flow. Okay, so when we talk about electrons moving through the body, which is the energy, all right, electron has to have somewhere to go to. It has to have a molecule or an atom that's looking for that electron to move towards. And when we're alkaline, we have a lot more electrons than we do when we're acid. So when we're acid, that's why electrons move much faster. Okay, it's as simple as that. Electrons are trying. We've got a body that's screaming for electrons. They're going to move very, very fast, and there's nothing stopping them. There's so many molecules and so many atoms that are screaming out for these electrons. Okay, and this person will be probably aging and very catabolic too at the same time. They're breaking down pretty quick. So a catabolic person, an aging person, an acid person, will prematurely age, whereas an alkaline person will look younger as they get older. All right. So, you know, if you see someone that's, looking very, very good for their age, more often than not, it's not necessarily the fact that they've been living healthy all their life. It's just that they're more of an anabolic alkaline person, and they just don't break down as quick, and they age very much slower than a catabolic person. Okay, because once again, those electrons, if their electrons are moving fast and we're acidic, it's because we have lots of atoms and lots of molecules, lots of free radicals that are screaming for these electrons, and that's where it's the transferring of these electrons from one molecule to another, or atom to another, which creates the breakdown, because there's a little tiny spark every time that happens, and that's when we start getting degeneration, breaking down, damage to the mitochondria and whatnot. That's where it all happens. It's these free radicals. So, more electrons we have. This is when we eat green foods, or we do grounding, and we go to the beach where there's lots of electrons in the air, lots of negative ions in the air and in the sea. Grounding, there's lots of negative ions, electrons in the ground that come up. This is why it's so good for you, and it helps you flourish and helps you slow down that aging process and that free radical activity. Okay, undigested food in your stool, hydrochloric acid, no brainer. All right. Coming down, and we'll just quickly go through here because we're running out of time now. How many liters of water? 3. The main thing is when I see someone drinking 3 liters, I think, whoa, that's good, because not most people don't drink enough. But the very next question I ask is, do we have an electrolyte issue? Yes, we do. Well, then makes it very, very important to say, make sure you take some good salt when you drink that amount of water. Okay. Well, when you drink any water, add some salt to it. Okay, so you don't flush it all out. All right, especially.
I've been doing that.
Yeah, good girl. All right, I knew you were anyway. So it's but just it's just something to be mindful of. All right, and you're taking that lemon water, and then just quickly come down here. What are you drinking? Just with coffee, there's a lot of deniers about coffee. My opinion on coffee, and I drink coffee. It's one of my vices, and I call it a vice because I don't believe coffee is good for you at all. Okay, a carrot cake might be made out of might have carrot, but it doesn't mean the carrot cake is going to be good for you. All right, it's a bit like coffee. There are some good aspects about coffee, but I see when it comes to catabolic especially, coffee tends to, if you're more anabolic or more catabolic, coffee tends to push you in either one, depending on which one you tend to be more on the side of. Okay, so just be wary of coffee. Like it, I will never stop having coffee. I don't think I feel so good. My life has changed so much over the last few years. I've never had so much energy, but I would feel better if I stopped having coffee, even a bit more. But just be wary of it. And just be very careful about making coffee from processed coffee at home. If you're going to have a coffee, my advice is to do it out, have it made properly. And if you have it at home, the odds are you're going to have more coffees than you need to. And like I said, I don't know enough about it, but I know it can cause problems. It's not as good as what people talk about. Coconut water, great electrolytes and whatnot. Almond milk, good stuff. Coconut milk, good stuff. Orange juice, no good for a blood type A. All right, orange juice would be poison. Okay, V8 juice, I'm not really sure what that is, but I know it comes out of a carton, so just be wary of what's in there. Come down here. Well, we're gonna cover the protocol at another time, either with you guys here or Eva here anyway, especially if she's going to be, because it's her thing, but we're going to cover that. But what she's going through there, I've got Eva to go through some of these things anyway to start with before we even started doing this, and in general looks pretty good. There's some pretty good stuff there. With breakfast and lunch and getting some feedback there, look, once again, we're blood type A, we need to be primarily plant-based. you know. But you know what? Regardless, I like that. If I was to generalize and say, well, what, you know, if I was just to generalize on a good diet, I would say 80% of what on your plate should be plant-based, 60% of that should be raw, 20% protein, bit of oil. In general, most people are going to thrive on that. All right, 80, 20, 60. Sorry, 80, 60, 20. 80% plant-based, 60% of that raw, 20% of that can be steamed or whatever. This is general guidelines, and then 20% protein. So many of us are eating too much protein, and we're wondering why we have lymphatic systems that are clogging up and God knows what, and we don't have the ability to be able to process it properly. We create ammonia in our systems because of that, and ammonia causes all sorts of problems, blah, blah, blah. So just use that as a basic guideline, but there's really not much that concerns me here with diet. It's, you know, I advise everybody to follow the blood type diet as a guideline, okay? Not as a rule, but as a guideline. I've seen too many correlations to say that the blood type diet is a load of rubbish, like a lot of people say. Nah, it's that. Well, do your work, do your research, and if you had a microscope like I do, and you're able to correlate a lot of this stuff, I see correlations all the time, especially with the blood type A. All right. So there's something in it. This guy knows what he's talking about. And if he says the stuff there, don't eat it. All right. Because it'll be pretty spot on. Okay. Just one thing on fresh or frozen veggies, you know. I know a lot of people say you got to eat just eat don't eat frozen food. Well, you'll probably find a lot of frozen veggies are going to be far more nutritious to you than fresh food, because fresh food is going to be picked too early, because otherwise it's not going to be on the shelf unless you pick it yourself. If you pick it yourself or you grow it yourself, that's different with fresh veggies, for sure. But otherwise, good frozen veggies, there's nothing wrong with that, because they're picked right at the time when they're at the peak nutrition, and they're frozen straight away. And if you have a refractometer, you can go and check for yourself. Go and get a fresh carrot, or a carrot that's on the, supposedly fresh, and crunch a little bit of it up and squeeze a bit of the juice in the refractometer and check to see what the refraction is, and see how it is. I've given you, there's somewhere in the paperwork, I've given you all the lessons there. On the refractometer, I've given you a list of the different veggies and the different readings to see what's good and what's bad. And then go and get a frozen carrot, and check it. You may be surprised. All right, I've done it many times. Me and Diane used to walk around with the refractometer, and we'd go and we had a little garlic crusher, and we'd go to these different markets and stuff, and we'd either buy, a bit of fruit or a bit of veggies, or we'd just break a little bit off and we'd put it in the crusher and put it up on the refractometer. We'd say, have a look at this. There's nothing in there. Have a look at this. Ooh, you know what I mean? Once again, we make assumptions. We look at a carrot and we compare carrots with carrots. One looks really nice. One, if you were to weigh them, you will notice a difference, because one will be less than the other because it's got less minerals in it. All right. We live in a world where everything's visual and it needs to look good, as opposed to, a crappy looking carrot that's full of minerals no one's going to buy, but they'll look at a perfect looking carrot that's got no minerals in it and it looks perfect. So this is just another assumption. And you can do that with a refractometer. Refractometer is brilliant for that. Okay. And then start holding the people to account that you're buying this stuff off, and say, have a look at this, because the farmers use the refractometers themselves. That's what they use it for. They use it a lot of farmers will use refractometers to be able to know when to harvest. All right, because it's going to tell them the mineral and sugar. Sugars and minerals come together. So the sugars are there, the minerals are going to be there. All right, so they come together. So once they take the reading and they go, right, we're at that point where we can harvest now because we've got enough there. All right, so you'll be surprised. And especially when you're buying veggies, and do comparisons between organic and non-organic. You'll be surprised. Don't just assume we buy organic, we're going to have good nutrition. It just hasn't been grown with pesticides. That's all. It doesn't mean it's nutritious necessarily. It should be, and it should be better because you don't have the pesticides. I know that, but just know what you're doing. Just make sure you don't make any assumptions about this stuff, and and just this is stuff you can do. All right, and we come down to the emotional well-being, which is a little bit lower. We notice right at the top that general well-being was 8, emotional well-being is a little bit lower on 5, and that's okay. That's understandable. All right. So the physical, when I look at these numbers, what I'm looking at, or what I'm thinking about the age, I'm thinking I look at these numbers and I'm seeing 8. Well, what am I looking at here? I'm looking at a girl that's got some robustness, that has some deep robustness that you must have. Otherwise, you'd be feeling a lot worse than you are with those numbers. Okay. I would be expecting, and a lot of people are like that I work with. They've got all these numbers like that, and you got to be very careful. You breathe on them, they're going to fall over. All right. I don't see that with Eva because otherwise these numbers would be a little bit lower. So 8, that tells me there's some robustness there. I typically see that with a blood type A anyway. Whereas a 5 feeling a little bit more emotionally sort of not so strong. And this is where the oxygen is, the lactic acid, the anabolic, the sugars. All right, sugars, anything to do with well-being, feeling good, feeling mentally clear, feeling good. Think about sugars; they control it all. Okay, and we now know through some of what I've talked about, some of the mechanisms behind why you do feel good. Okay, if you're feeling a bit depressed, most people you say go and walk around the block. They're going to walk around the block. They come back. They sit down. They're sitting differently. They're sitting up a little bit more. They're feeling a bit better. Why? Well, the only difference is that they've got more oxygen in the system.
That's what I'm going to do, Mark. I'm going to eat supper and then I'm going to take a walk around the block.
Good girl. All right. It's just so important, and then we feel better. Then we have a little bit more mental clarity. We have emotionally feeling a little bit better. But then we're not so stressed. We don't have the anxiety a little bit more. We're fixing this up. And all of a sudden, we've got this car that was broken down and wasn't working very well. We're trying to bump start and push it and, push it up the highway. And all of a sudden, it's starting to catch and it's starting to fire. And what happens then? It just takes off. And this is what we're trying to do here. We're not trying to fix everything. Because we don't need to. The body will do that. I mean, the car doesn't have a healing machine. The car doesn't have a self-fixing machine. So it's not a brilliant analogy to use, but we do. We just need to push ourselves into gear, and then we don't need to be too concerned about all these things unless we get to the point where, okay, we've hydrated, we've got some digestion going on, we've got our pHs where they need to be. We're getting some electrolytes and a bit of blood pressure. We've got this stuff going on, but we still have problems. But that's okay. Well, then we need to look deeper, and we can do that. And then we might need to get into understanding what's going on, look deeper into the adrenals, look deeper into the thyroid and stuff like that. Who knows? But no point doing that until with the assumption that all these things are working, because they ain't. And everybody's the same, we have these people that are doing so much work and yet they're not even looking at digestion. And if they look at digestion, they don't even know what to look at, because the majority of people out there, and even the majority of people working in this industry, don't understand digestion. They think digestion is all about just some digestive enzymes and some HCl. They don't understand the chemistry. They don't understand the importance of having that resistance between alkalinity and acidic, and that shearing off. That's where digestion helps. So it's always the basics. It's always the easy stuff. It has to be. I wouldn't be doing this if it was hard. All right. It's so, for so many people, it's just so damn simple. In theory, the difficulty is always to be able to get people to do what they need to be, what they should do. Okay, to be able to make it happen. And sometimes I struggle to get people to drink enough water. So you can see the uphill battle. When I get off the phone and they go and nothing happens, it's because they haven't done what I've asked them to do. And that is unfortunately the majority of the people. That's the way it is. Okay, you can lead a horse to water, but people have ingrained habits and they're not hurting enough, and therefore they quickly revert back to those habits, back to their comfort zone, and they're not willing to make that compromise or that sacrifice, I should say, or maybe not even a sacrifice. You're not sacrificing anyway. You think you are, but they're not willing to give up what they have now for something better. So they just fall back into that. And unfortunately, that's where a lot of people are, which is why I really focus up front as quick as possible, is to try and get some wins on the board so people start feeling a little bit better. So they go, oh, hang on, maybe this Mark knows what he's talking about, and you get a bit of momentum, because I do know what I'm talking about. I'm sure lots of other people know what they're talking about too. And I just look at things a little bit differently. But it's, like I said just now, just get some momentum. Don't worry too much about all the noise and all the symptoms and all the conditions and all the illnesses and all the labels, which will just do nothing but stress the hell out of you. I don't think about anything about that. Who cares? We might need to know about it, but when you ain't drinking enough water and you haven't got digestion, your cell membranes all over the place, and you're producing lactic acid and blah blah blah. Well, of course you're going to have that going on, and and nothing's going to happen unless you address them. All right, listen, I'm starting to wane now, so I think we've
Well, Mark.
yeah, we've got through. I think we've had a good 2-hour session. I think and I hope that as I go through this, I know we're talking about Eva's situation, but there's a lot of little bits of learning in there as I talk, and like I said, the more you hear this, the more you'll start to. It took me a long time to get my head around all of this, and I guess getting back to what I first said, Linda, when we first started talking, and you, Eva, and everybody, and I probably don't emphasize enough with this, and that's measure, 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 measure. All right. You don't run a business, you don't run a company, you can't run your life without measuring stuff. If you don't have a budget, you're not looking at your finances. What are you going to have if you don't have finance? If you don't measure, you don't know what's in your bank. What are you going to have? You're going to have stress. Okay. And this is what we're doing with our bodies. We don't know what's going on, so we're going to have stress. So let's take that out of the equation.
A lot of measuring.
Yeah, let's do the measuring. Let's go and have a look in the bank and go, okay, well, we're doing okay. We don't need to worry about that. And it's a bit like that with this measuring. Okay, well, I know that I'm at least, I've got some idea of what the hell's going on, and I can take some control, like control of your finances, like control of your business. You can only do that if you do the measure. And I guess I'll close by saying, we're like a business, like us. We're always going to have challenges, all right? But numbers are going to tell us where those challenges are and how concerned we should be, all right? And just like a business is always going to have problems. But numbers are going to tell you where those problems are and how concerned you should be, all right? You can't run a business without monitoring the numbers. And now that we know that we can convert some of these things that I teach you to measure, we can't run a body without understanding the numbers as well. And it just takes the emotions out of things, okay? Because numbers don't lie, all right? Okay, well, let's wrap this up, all right? And okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mark.
All right, guys, lovely talking to you. Wrap this up, and I'm going to do another session on Sunday with the Australian people, which I don't know if that equates to what time for you. I think it actually works out about this. No, I don't know. I'm getting so confused, but it doesn't matter. We'll see how this pans out with tracking through the as far as the case studies concerned. And the other thing too, I open this case studies up to everybody. Look, like I've asked people, if you want to, particularly it's the same as you, Linda. If you want to go like, can we do a case study on mine? Yeah, let's get your numbers and we'll do that as well. That's what we want to do. Let's make it more relevant so that we can, we're actually talking about something real and it's something real concerned with the people that are actually doing the course. All right.
Right. Okay.
Okay, guys.
Okay.
Thanks very much, and you have a good wherever you are. Good afternoon, good evening. All right. See you later. Bye bye.
Okay. Thank you, Mark. Bye bye.